7. Miracles in the Bible that still happen today. From the beginning of human history, people have searched for signs that heaven still touches the earth. The Bible overflows with stories of wonder, seas that part, storms that obey a single word, bread that multiplies, and hearts transformed by light. These are not merely ancient legends meant to dazzle or frighten. They are revelations of a living God, whose compassion has never ceased to move through creation. A miracle, by definition, is something that defies explanation, yet it always reveals a deeper truth. God's power is not limited to what we can measure, and His care is not confined to any moment in time. Some miracles announce themselves in blazing glory, like a sea splitting in two. Others arrive quietly, disguised as mercy, the forgiveness that softens a hardened heart, the strength to carry pain without bitterness, the peace that returns after a long night of fear. When we open Scripture, we are not looking into a dead record of divine activity. We are looking into a mirror. The same patterns repeat. People face the impossible. Fear takes hold. Faith hesitates. And then somehow, God makes a way. The miracles of the Bible are not simply events of the past. They are windows into how God still works today. In the pages that follow, we will revisit 7 of the most extraordinary miracles ever recorded, and explore how each continues to unfold in the modern world. They are stories not only of power, but of love. Not only of what God once did, but of what He is still doing now. 1. The Red Sea parted. God still makes a way. Freedom had finally come. After 400 years of slavery in Egypt, the people of Israel were walking away from the whip, away from the cries of their captors, into the promise of a new beginning. Yet their first taste of liberty was not safety, but terror. Before them stretched the vast Red Sea, its dark waters impassable. Behind them thundered Pharaoh's army, furious at their escape. The desert winds carried the sound of chariots and hooves. The people panicked. "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us here to die?" they shouted at Moses. Freedom suddenly looked like a cruel trick. Moses stood between fear and faith. He had no weapon but a wooden staff, no army but a trembling crowd. Yet he lifted his hand, because God had told him to. A mighty wind began to blow. The water shuddered, then split apart, rising into 2 shimmering walls on either side. A path of dry ground appeared, where moments before there had been only death. The Israelites walked through that narrow corridor of deliverance, step by step, hearts pounding. Behind them, the Egyptians followed. But when the last Israelite reached the far shore, the sea returned to its place, swallowing the oppressors who had enslaved them. Dawn broke over a new world. The people were free, not by their own strength, but by God's intervention. This miracle is about more than geography or history. It is about the way God works when His people reach the end of their own strength. The Red Sea stands for every situation that looks impossible. The job lost, the diagnosis given, the marriage broken, the fear too heavy to name. It is the space between captivity and freedom, between despair and deliverance. God still parts seas today. Sometimes He does it visibly. The sudden breakthrough, the unexpected answer, the miracle that leaves us speechless. Other times He does it invisibly, through endurance, through unexpected peace, through the courage to take one more step even when the waters haven't moved yet. The timing is always His. The Israelites wanted rescue sooner, but God waited until escape seemed hopeless, so that His power would be undeniable. He often brings us to the edge of the impossible, to show that He alone can make a way. The sea does not part before we step forward. It parts as we move in faith. Every time someone chooses to forgive when revenge seems easier, the Red Sea parts. Every time a person refuses to surrender to fear, the Red Sea parts. Every time hope rises in a heart that had forgotten how to believe, the Red Sea parts again. The miracle teaches that faith is not a feeling of safety, but an act of movement. The Israelites did not wait for calm waters. They walked through towering walls of uncertainty, because they trusted the one who had called them out of bondage. The same God who made a road through the sea still makes roads through impossible circumstances. The waters may look different, but the power behind them is unchanged. Sometimes God does not remove the obstacle. He transforms it into the very path of deliverance. The Red Sea that once threatened to drown them became the highway of their freedom. So when you find yourself standing at the edge of your own sea, when everything in front of you looks impossible, and everything behind you feels like defeat, remember that the miracle is already in motion. The wind is blowing, even if you cannot see it yet. The path will appear, even if the water still looks solid. Because God has not changed. He still leads his people through deep waters and out into freedom. He still turns fear into faith, captivity into courage, despair into song. The Red Sea parted once, but its lesson has never closed. Feeding of the 5,000, God still provides. The sun was sinking over the hills of Galilee when the crowd realized how far they had come. They had followed Jesus all day, captivated by his words, drawn by his compassion. No one had thought about food until hunger started whispering through the thousands of people gathered on the grass. The disciples panicked first. "Send them away," they told Jesus. "There's nothing to eat out here." But Jesus surprised them with a simple command. "You give them something to eat." They looked at one another, confused. Philip calculated the cost and shook his head. Even 8 months' effort wages wouldn't fit buy enough bread for everyone. Then Andrew spoke up shyly. "There's a boy here with 5 small loaves and 2 fish. But what good is that for so many?" It was a laughably small meal for such a massive need. But Jesus smiled. "Bring them here to me." He had the people sit in groups on the grass. Then, taking the boy's lunch in his hands, he lifted his eyes to heaven, gave thanks, and began to break the bread. The disciples started handing out pieces. As they did, the bread didn't run out. Every person ate. Every stomach was full. And when the crowd had finished, 12 baskets of leftovers remained, one for each disciple who had doubted. The miracle of the loaves and fish is about more than food. It is about how God provides, quietly, generously, and often through the little we already hold. It begins not with abundance, but with gratitude. Jesus gave thanks before the bread multiplied, showing that thanksgiving always comes before increase. We often believe God provides only in grand ways. A big opportunity, a financial breakthrough, a healing. But most often, his provision happens in small, sacred rhythms. A friend's encouragement arriving right when despair sets in. An unexpected moment of peace in a sleepless night. The strength to keep going when we thought we were finished. The boy's offering teaches that miracles begin when we release what we cling to. He could have kept his food to himself. Instead, he gave it away and discovered that giving multiplies what keeping never could. God's abundance always moves through open hands. In our modern world, the fear of scarcity shapes everything. We think we need more time, more money, more control, before we can be generous. But the God who fed 5,000 with a single meal still whispers, "Bring me what you have, and watch what I can do." Provision is not about how much we possess, but about how much we trust. When we offer our limited resources, our patience, our kindness, our willingness, God turns them into something overflowing. So the next time you feel you have too little to make a difference, remember the boy on the hillside. The miracle didn't start when the bread appeared. It started when he opened his hands. God still provides, not just enough to survive, but enough to bless others too. 3. Jesus calms the storm. God still brings peace. Evening had fallen over the Sea of Galilee. After a long day of teaching, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us cross to the other side." They pushed the boat from shore, their oars cutting through the still water. The air was calm, the stars bright, and the gentle rocking of the boat promised rest. Then, without warning, the wind changed. A storm swept down from the surrounding hills, sudden, violent, merciless. The sky darkened, the waves rose higher, and rain slashed against their faces. The disciples were experienced fishermen, but this was unlike anything they had ever faced. Water poured over the sides, the boat pitched dangerously. Panic seized them. In the stern, Jesus slept. While the storm howled, he lay still, his head on a cushion, untroubled by the chaos. At last, the disciples lost control. They shook him awake and shouted above the wind, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Jesus stood, dripping with rain, and faced the fury around him. His voice was calm but commanding. "Peace, be still." Immediately the wind stopped. The waves sank into silence. The sea lay flat and mirror-like beneath the moonlight. The disciples, still trembling, stared at him in awe. "Who is this," they whispered, "that even the wind and the waves obey him?" That question is the heart of the story. It was never only about weather, it was about faith. The storm on the water revealed the storm inside their hearts. Fear, doubt, the desperate need for control. In calming the sea, Jesus revealed that true peace does not depend on calm circumstances, but on divine presence. He didn't promise his followers a life without storms. Instead, he promised to be with them in every one. The miracle is not always that the storm stops. Sometimes it is that we remain standing while it rages. In today's world, the storms look different, but feel the same. Anxiety rises like waves, bad news rolls in like thunder, and peace feels like a distant shore. We ask the same question the disciples did, "Don't you care?" And the same answer comes, not through thunder, but through whisper, "I am here." Faith is not pretending the storm isn't real. It's believing the storm isn't final. The wind and waves still obey his voice. Peace is not the absence of chaos, but the presence of Christ within it. When life crashes and fear threatens to pull you under, remember that Jesus still speaks those same three words. Peace, be still. The sea may not calm instantly, but your heart can. The miracle of the storm reminds us that peace is possible, even when the world shakes. The one who commanded the wind still commands the soul. 4. Healing the blind, God still opens eyes. In Jerusalem there was a man who had been blind since birth. For years he had sat in the same place, begging beside the road, hearing footsteps, but never seeing faces. People passed by and whispered about him. Some said his blindness was punishment, others said he must have sinned. To them he was an object of pity and blame. One day, Jesus and his disciples walked past. The disciples asked, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus replied, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. This happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him." Then Jesus did something strange. He spat on the ground, made mud with his hands, and gently placed it on the man's eyes. "Go," he said, "wash in the pool of Siloam." The man obeyed. When he washed the mud away, light flooded his world for the first time. Shapes, colors, faces, everything was new. For the first time he saw the sky, the stones, the faces of those who had only been voices. But the miracle didn't end with sight. When questioned by the religious leaders, the man's courage grew, whether he is a sinner or not. "I don't know," he said. "One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see." His physical eyes were opened, but so was his understanding. This story isn't only about literal blindness. It's about the blindness that still covers human hearts. There are many ways to be unable to see. When pride clouds vision, when pain distorts truth, when fear keeps us from recognizing grace, God still opens eyes today, not only by healing the body, but by awakening the soul. Sometimes spiritual sight begins with confusion or discomfort. The mud on the man's eyes may have felt strange and humiliating, but it was part of his healing. Likewise, God often uses what feels unpleasant, loss, failure, waiting, to help us see clearly. Clarity often comes after surrender. To see as God sees is a miracle that changes everything. It transforms the way we view others, ourselves, and even our suffering. When our eyes open, we realize that the world is not random but radiant with purpose, that light is stronger than shadow, and that grace is not earned but given. The man born blind stands as a timeless reminder. Sight is a gift, both physical and spiritual. Each moment of understanding, each revelation of truth, each act of empathy is another pair of eyes opening. God is still in the business of giving vision to hearts that want to see and to lives that have lived too long in darkness. 5. The raising of Lazarus. God still restores what was lost. Bethany was wrapped in grief. Lazarus was dead. His sisters, Mary and Martha, sat surrounded by mourners, their house heavy with sorrow. When they heard that Jesus was coming, Martha went out to meet him. Her voice trembled as she said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." "The Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Jesus looked at her with compassion and said, "Your brother will rise again." Martha nodded through her tears. "I know he will rise in the resurrection at the last day." But Jesus replied with words that still echo through the centuries, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die." When they reached the tomb, Jesus wept. Those tears showed that divine power is not cold or distant. God does not rush past human pain. He enters it. Then Jesus gave a command that defied reason. "Take away the stone." Martha hesitated. Lazarus had been dead 4 days, but the stone rolled aside. Jesus prayed aloud, thanking his Father, and cried out, "Lazarus, come out." From the dark tomb came the sound of movement. A figure appeared, wrapped in burial cloths. "Unbind him and let him go," Jesus said. Life had returned where death had ruled. Hope had been reborn in Bethany. This miracle reveals more than Jesus' authority over death. It shows his willingness to bring life into what we have already buried. We all have tombs, dreams we think are gone, relationships we've written off, faith that feels dead. Yet God still stands at those doors and calls life out of them. Sometimes the resurrection we need isn't physical. It's emotional, spiritual, or relational. God restores joy after despair, purpose after failure, love after betrayal. What seems final to us is only the beginning to him. The voice that said, "Lazarus, come out," still speaks to hearts weighed down by hopelessness, whispering, "Rise again." There's also a lesson in the delay. Jesus didn't come immediately when he heard Lazarus was sick. To Martha and Mary, his silence looked like neglect, but the waiting allowed a greater miracle to unfold. Likewise, when God seems late, he is often preparing something deeper than what we asked for. The raising of Lazarus reminds us that God's power doesn't end at the grave, and his compassion doesn't end at our weakness. What we consider lost can still be restored, renewed, and redeemed. The tomb is never the end of the story when God is near. So when you stand before your own sealed door, your Lazarus, don't walk away. Listen, somewhere beyond the stone, a voice is calling your name, and when you hear it, life begins again. 6. Daniel in the lion's den. God still protects. Daniel had lived a life of integrity in a corrupt empire. Though a foreigner in Babylon, he rose to power through honesty, wisdom, and unwavering faith in God. His character made him respected, but also hated. Other officials, jealous of his influence, schemed to destroy him. They convinced the king to sign a decree forbidding prayer to any god or man, except the king himself. Anyone who disobeyed would be thrown into a den of lions. When Daniel heard the decree, he did not panic or plot. He simply did what he had always done. 3 times a day, he opened his windows toward Jerusalem, knelt down, and prayed. He knew the cost. But faith had taught him that safety is never found in compromise. His enemies were waiting. They rushed to the king with their accusation. Though the king loved Daniel, he could not break his own law. With deep regret, he ordered Daniel to be cast into the lion's den. The heavy stone was rolled over the entrance. The king spent the night fasting, unable to sleep, tormented by what he had done. At dawn he hurried to the den and called out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God been able to rescue you from the lions?" From the darkness came a calm voice. "My God sent his angel, and he shut the lions' set mouths. They have not hurt me." When Daniel was lifted out, there was not even a scratch on him. The same mouths that had roared now sat silent. The king proclaimed that Daniel's God was the true and living God, whose power endures forever. This story is not just about divine protection from physical danger. It's about courage in the face of overwhelming threat. Daniel's faith didn't guarantee an escape from the den. It guaranteed the presence of God within it. Protection is not always the absence of danger. Sometimes it is the peace that comes while danger remains. Modern lions still exist, though they no longer prowl behind stone walls. They come as fear, hatred, injustice, and temptation. They surround us in boardrooms, classrooms, and online spaces. Like Daniel, we face choices between faith and fear, conviction and compromise. Every time we choose integrity over convenience, we step into our own den. Yet God's protection continues. Sometimes he closes the mouths of danger. Sometimes he strengthens our spirit so that we stand unshaken, even when the world turns against us. Either way, his power is not diminished. Daniel Sepp's story reminds us that obedience is the safest place to be, even when it leads into risk. The den we dread often becomes the very stage where God displays his strength. And when the night passes and dawn comes, we too can look back and say, "My God was with me there." Faith does not mean we won't face lions. It means they cannot devour what belongs to God. 7. Saul becomes Paul. God still transforms lives. Saul of Tarsus was a man convinced he was doing God's work. Educated, disciplined, and zealous, he saw followers of Jesus as dangerous rebels corrupting the faith of Israel. He made it his mission to hunt them down, imprison them, and destroy the movement before it could spread. To Saul, righteousness meant control. Faith meant fury. But one journey changed everything. On the road to Damascus, where he planned to arrest more believers, a blinding light exploded around him. He fell to the ground, shielding his eyes. A voice thundered, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" "Who are you, Lord?" he gasped. "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting," came the reply. When Saul rose, he could no longer see. His companions led him into the city, where he sat for 3 days, blind, broken, fasting, and praying. The man who had thought he saw clearly now saw nothing at all. In that darkness, God was preparing him for a new vision. Meanwhile, a disciple named Ananias received a command from the Lord. "Go to Saul of Tarsus, for he is my chosen instrument." Ananias was terrified. Saul's reputation for violence was well known, but obedience outweighed fear. He entered the house, placed his hands on Saul, and said, "Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus has sent me, so that you may see again and be filled with the Holy Spirit." Immediately, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes. He was baptized, his strength returned, and his mission was forever changed. The persecutor became the preacher. The hunter became the shepherd. The man who had used words as weapons now used them to bring healing and hope. This transformation was not a mild moral improvement. It was a complete recreation. God didn't patch up Saul's old identity. He gave him a new one. From that moment, Saul became Paul, the apostle who would carry the message of grace across the world. Through his letters, his courage, and his faith, he would shape Christianity itself. The miracle of Saul's conversion is proof that no one is beyond redemption. We may see some people as hopeless cases, but God sees potential. He delights in turning enemies into ambassadors, failures into teachers, doubters into disciples. The same light that stopped Saul still breaks into lives today, sometimes suddenly, sometimes slowly, but always powerfully. Transformation is God's most intimate miracle. It begins when pride collapses and surrender takes its place. Like Saul, we often have to be blinded before we can truly see. When our old certainties fall away, space opens for new vision, a vision not of control, but of compassion. Every time a heart softens, every time hatred turns to love, every time someone discovers purpose in pain, the road to Damascus is traveled again. God still transforms lives. The story ends where all true miracles lead in gratitude. The man who once destroyed the church now built it. The voice that once cursed Jesus now praised him. And the light that once blinded him became the light he carried to the world. The God of miracles still moves. When we look back across these 7 stories, we see more than isolated acts of wonder. We see a pattern of divine love woven through human history. Every miracle, from the Red Sea to the road to Damascus, begins where human ability ends. They show us that God does not perform miracles to impress, but to reveal himself powerful enough to command nature, gentle enough to touch the broken, patient enough to transform a heart. The seas we face today may not be made of water, but they still rise in fear and uncertainty. Hunger still gnaws, storms still rage, blindness still clouds hearts, tombs still seal away hope, lions still threaten, and pride still blinds. Yet through it all, the same voice still speaks. Be still. The same hands still break bread. The same power still restores. Miracles remind us that the ordinary world is charged with divine possibility. They call us to look again at the familiar and see God at work, in the quiet endurance of faith, in the kindness that refuses to die, in the peace that comes from nowhere but heaven. The God of the Bible is not gone. He is not silent. He is still writing new stories of deliverance, provision, healing, and transformation, in hospitals, in homes, in classrooms, in hearts. The form may change, but the truth remains. The God who once split the sea still makes a way today.